al-Sahih. And the name of the book is what? Huh? Al-Musnad. Ahsant, right? Al-Musnad. Is that it? Just Musnad? Al-Sahih, huh? Al-Musnad al-Sahih. Sorry, huh? All of them are Sahih, inshallah. So he named his book Al-Musnad al-Sahih. In Musnad al-Sahih, these are two terms that have a very important meaning. Musnad meaning what? The term Musnad, what does it mean? I mean, ممكن الذي أسند إليه صح, but that's the لغوي meaning. What does it have to do with our discussion? Hadith students, yes. Jayyid, all right, has something to do with isnad. What does it have to do with the isnad? When Imam Muslim says al-musnad, what does he mean and what does he say? Chain, what about them? If he says that they're musnad, he's automatically saying that they're what? Connected, ahsant. Right, so he's saying that they're connected, and he puts another qayd. He puts another condition. He says, when he says al-musnad al-sahih, that al-sahih meaning they are authentic. And we had talked about this before. So when we say that Imam Muslim uses the word sahih, he uses it in opposition to what term? Saqim, ahsant, right? So sahih and Muslim, it has a wider or has a broader meaning than it does for some of the later scholars. So what is we use the term authentic, which is correct if we're talking about hadith and how to grade them today. But if we're talking about Imam Muslim's time, if we broaden the meaning a little bit, what is a better way of representing sahih? Sahih. How do we translate sahih to Imam Muslim? Because we said the opposite is saqim. Saqim means weak or rejected. Sahih would mean what? What is the opposite of rejected? Correct? Accepted, right? So we would say sahih means hadith that are accepted. So those are hadith that have a connected chain and are accepted amongst the people of knowledge. So this is how we would use the term al-musnad al-sahih. طيب, Imam Muslim's entire name is Muslim. Ahsant, good. Ibn Hijjaj, Ibn Muslim. And where is he from? Naysabur. And where did he die? Naysabur. And his lineage, his family name is? Naysabur is not his family name. That's where he's from. Muslim ibn Hajjaj ibn Muslim al. This was the dispute on whether he was Arab or not Arab, right? What was the family name? Al-Qushayri. Al-Qushayri. All right, this is an important discussion. Last time, what did we speak about? What did we talk about? I spent a lot of time discussing this, and we didn't finish the discussion. We're going to talk about it today. On the authority of. So we talked about this issue of anana. We talked about this issue of anana, and what did we say? What is Imam Muslim's claim? What did he say that this is something that all of the people of knowledge agree upon? If they're thiqah. Thiqa means that they're reliable, good. Okay, and they used on the authority of, then we assume they met with what condition? There are some conditions that he mentions. That they don't hide narrators, they're not mudallisin, good. What else? What else is important? Not it's been known, what else? There's another important condition that Imam Muslim puts. Like, so if you have two thiqa narrators, and they use an, right? They use on the authority of. You have two reliable narrators that are saying on the authority of. What is the and they are not mudallis. What is the condition that Imam Muslim puts? That they have to what? Mu'asara. That they had to have lived in the same time. This condition of having met, this is a condition that Imam Muslim says is what? He says هذا قول مخترع, that this qawl is something that is new, it is invented, and it is not from the ways, and it is not sound from the people of hadith. He said anybody who makes this condition, then this condition is false. This is a false conditions that the scholars of hadith never actually utilized or implemented, and he brings a number of examples. And we'll finish discussing some of them today. So over here, what he's basically saying is that if you have two sound narrators, and they live in the same time period, and they use on the authority of, then automatically I should, what with this hadith? Hmm. I should accept it. And the exception is where? If they are what? If one of the narrators is? They're thiqah. There's a practice that they used to do that was considered problematic. No, mursal is different. Mursal is inqita'. Huh? Yeah, they hide. Mudallis. Huh? Mudallis. So if an individual, if he is one who hides the intermediary, if he is known to be from those narrators who hides intermediaries, then the hadith is going to be rejected. But if he is not a mudallis, automatically what do we do with the hadith? Accept it. Why isn't it so important that we discuss this issue? Why am I spending so much time on this? I was like, why is Shaykh Farhan wasting all this time discussing this minutia issue or this small issue? I'm sorry? Okay. What is the detail here that the devil that we're trying to avoid is? Okay, but over here, if we're saying that if you have two reliable narrators and they're narrating on each other and there's a possibility for an intermediary, the possibility exists. Even Imam Muslim, what did he say? He said that this is what? Possible or not possible? He says this is possible. He said, but this is not from the conditions that the scholars of hadith have put forward. So there is a possibility that exists. But just the fact that these two individuals are what? They're truthful and they're reliable and they're precise. This is reason enough for us to trust their narrations. And this is the practice عامة أهل العلم, that all of the scholars and the people of knowledge in hadith, they would utilize this form. And there are a couple reasons that it's important for us to deal with this issue. Why is it important? Why is it an important issue to discuss? Because it was utilized, right? So if we understand that from the ways that hadith have reached us, that this is part of the grading system, right? This is part of the ways that hadith were graded. And it's important for us to utilize that and understand that. Why else is it important? You guys remember the discussion that we had last time? Why do some scholars consider Imam Bukhari's Sahih to be asah, to be more authentic than Imam Muslim's Sahih? Based on what we're talking about. Okay. So you have individual ahadith that you have criticism of, but I'm saying in general, based on the discussion that we're having, we said that the first reason that it's so important for us to understand this issue of an'ana and this issue of not making it a condition that they have met, we said that the first reason that it's important is for us to understand the methodology of these scholars of hadith. It's very important for us to understand that. And we understand that this is from their methodology. The second reason that we're learning this, and I'm spending so much time on it, right? Like you guys might feel like I just keep pounding this issue home. It's very important for us to understand, number one, the methodology. Number two, that any claim otherwise is what? Is false. In this claim, where is it made? Where is it generally made? Like, no, this is a condition. And who put this condition? There's a very famous claim today. Yeah. Ahsant. Right? So the claim today that a number of scholars and a number of individuals make is that Bukhari is more sound than Muslim because of this condition we're talking about, that he actually what? He actually established it. And we said that this was problematic from a number of angles. Number one, we had talked about last time. What are some of the things I mentioned last time that give strength to Imam Muslim's argument? So we have two arguments here, right? We have one argument that says that making sure that these individuals met is a condition versus them being reliable and living in the same time period is enough. So basically over here, if I wanted to summarize it, proving that they met versus proving that they didn't. Right? If I had to summarize it. Which one is more difficult? Proving that they met. This is far more difficult. Proving that they didn't meet, that's actually easier, right? Because all it takes is one or two people to say like, oh, well, these guys actually never met. But the moment they say on the authority of, we assume that they met. And they live in the same time period, we assume that they met. So when it comes to these two statements, and it comes to these two arguments, Imam Muslim's argument is the second. He says that you need to prove to me that they, what? That they didn't meet, right? This is his argument, and he says that all of the scholars of hadith, this was their madhab. But then you have this statement saying that no, you have to prove that they met. Where and when did this statement become famous? I'm sorry? After Imam Bukhari. That's a good guess. How much after? Who is the famous scholar that actually started making this statement or making this claim? Before Ibn Hajar. Much before Ibn Hajar. Qadi Iyad. Ahsant. Right? So Qadi Iyad. I want to read you guys something that Ibn Salah actually mentions. And Ibn Salah, he's important for a few reasons. One of them is that he actually has an explanation of Sahih Bukhari. It's called Siyanat Sahih Muslim. So قال ابن صلاح في صيانة صحيح مسلم وفيما قاله مسلم نظر. And concerning what Imam Muslim says, there is a point to note. قال ولا أرى هذا الحكم يستمر بعد متقدمين فيما وجد من المصنفين في تصانيفهم. He says that this condition that he put, it didn't continue after him. And this is a very important point. This condition of proving that they didn't meet, it didn't commit, meaning that during Imam Muslim's time and before, it was what? It was a condition. He said, but when it comes to later books, then it actually becomes a condition. So is he agreeing or disagreeing with Imam Muslim's? He's agreeing with it. He's agreeing with it, saying that yes, what Imam Muslim is saying is correct, but it's correct for his time. And it's correct for his book. فما ذكروه عن مشايخهم قائلين فيه ذكر فلان أو قال فلان أي فليس له حكم اتصال. So he says that when it is said that so-and-so said, or it is said about so-and-so, then this does not take the ruling of a connected chain. فليس له حكم اتصال. ما لم يكن له من شيخه إجازة. If he does not have a clear permission to narrate. Right? If he doesn't have ijazah to narrate, then this is something that would not take that same ruling. And again, Ibn Salah says that this thought of proving that people met, this was something that was important later, but it was not something that applied to earlier times. Why is that? It's something that's worth discussing and something that we actually can talk about. But why do you think it was more important later than it was earlier? So there are I don't want to say fewer people, but fewer. What type of people that are important to us when it comes to the books of hadith? Rawat. When it came to narrators, right, the narrators were few. As you get later in time, what happens? Right, the number of narrators increase, and the problem with that is it easy to find a biography of every single one of those narrators? Right, so I have more biographical information of who? About who? Earlier or later narrators? What do you guys think? Of early narrators. It's easy for me to determine them. And why is that important? Because I know when they lived, I know when they died, I know who they sat with, and I know who their students are. But as you get later and later, the problem is you have so many branches, and you have so many chains, and you have so many people, it's very difficult to determine when certain people lived. It's very difficult to determine who they sat with. It's very difficult to determine who their students were. And if I don't have that information, then at that point I have to prove what? That they actually met, right? This is where it becomes important, right? Because I don't have this other information. The information for the earlier scholars is there. For many scholars, we know when they were born. For more, we know when they died. So when it comes to discussions of hadith, we find a lot more emphasis on when they died versus when they were born. Why? So a death, at the point of death, it gives a better time frame than when somebody was born, right? So when somebody dies, we know for sure after that year it's not possible that anybody narrated from them, right? That's why that helps. The problem is if we only know when they were born, do we know how long they lived? Right? And it increases the chances of people claiming that they met into others and they met other narrators. So this is why you always have wafayat. Like, so you even have books that are called Tarikh, Wafayat, Rawat, you know what I mean? The dates of when scholars died, right? And that's all they did. They just focused on when all of these scholars died. Why? Because when you have that tahdid, when you have that definition of when people died, it gives you a lot more insight and it gives you a lot more information on how and when these individuals lived so that you know when the narrations were cut off from them and who was able to meet them and who was not. Is it important to know when they were born? Yes, but it was not considered something that was as important as knowing when those rawat or those individuals actually passed away and when they died. So this claim that Imam Bukhari made it a condition for all of the narrators in his book to have met, this is something that happened later, right? This was a later claim. What are some of the proofs we mentioned last time that tell us, or that we took away from, that showed us that what Imam Muslim says is something that even Imam Bukhari applied to his Sahih? And Qadi Iyad, just for reference, he died 544. Qadi Iyad, he died 544. Imam Bukhari, when did he die? Do you guys know? 256 was, yes, 256 was Bukhari, 261 was Muslim. So 256, you're talking about 300 years after Imam Bukhari, you have somebody making a claim that Imam Bukhari made this condition. What are some of the responses that no, this is not a condition that Imam Bukhari made? What are some good responses or solid ones? Or we don't have any good ones. Right, he himself uses anan in his book. Right, so you actually have matching a hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, and in both of them you have anana. Right, you have this on the authority of. This is something that you find in both books. So that it's not possible that it was Imam Bukhari's claim. Also, Imam Muslim's claim that the ajma' ahl al-ilm, right? So the scholars of hadith have agreed on this condition. Is this a strong claim or no? طيب, what makes this claim stronger when it comes to Bukhari? Yeah, تفضل. Yeah. Yep. Right, so Imam Muslim, how many years did he study with Imam Bukhari? Do you guys remember? About 5 years. So Imam Muslim, and I don't know if you guys remember the timeline, when did he finish writing his Sahih? Before, that's right. How much before? So here you have 250. 250 is when he stopped, right? So 250, around then, is when he finished writing his Sahih. And in that same year, what happened? He met Imam Bukhari. And Imam Bukhari, he stayed in Naysabur for how many years? He stayed for 5 years, and his last year he left. And Imam Muslim stayed. So Imam Muslim, he studied with Imam Bukhari for 5 years. His book was being reported. Does it make sense that he would allow something that he clearly is opposing his teacher in to stay? How do we know that Imam Muslim held Imam Bukhari at such high regard? Or he didn't? He's just like, yeah, you know, he's a good sheikh and I benefited from him, but I'm going to stay up on my opinion. Right, so he chose to learn from him at what? At the cost of his sheikh and his peers. Right, so he's willing to give that up because he saw the ilm in Imam Bukhari, because he saw the knowledge that he has. You also have other narrations where Imam Muslim, he would kiss the head of Imam Bukhari, talking about you are the Imam of ilal. Like, I recognize you as the Imam who understands and knows how to deal with the defects in the hadith. Very clear narrations that tell us about their relationship. So his recognition of his knowledge, his recognition of the depth of knowledge that he had, would it make sense for him to continue to go against the sheikh? No, it wouldn't. He had those 5 years to do something, and then he himself lived another 5 years. So he had a total of 11-year time span where he could have changed his thought or changed his ideas, but he still didn't. Not just that, he brings a number of statements from the people of knowledge actually supporting his statement and supporting his claim. Last time we had talked about, or I think we reached Ibn Hajar's statement, where Ibn Hajar, and why is it important that we mention Ibn Hajar when it comes to Bukhari? Because of Fath al-Bari. Fath al-Bari is one of the most famous explanation of what? Sahih Bukhari. So, do you think he knows Sahih Bukhari or no? Maybe a little bit, right? So he knows Sahih Bukhari hadithan. He knows Sahih Bukhari every single hadith. Why? Because he sat and he explained every single one of these hadith. So he knew it extremely well. And he himself, what does he says? He says the issue of critiquing hadith due to disconnected chains and not having that which connects them, yani using what? Anana, then this is rare. Then this is rare. Meaning that even he has to acknowledge in Sahih Bukhari what happens. That anana happens. Even he had to acknowledge it. That, okay, it doesn't happen a lot, but it happens in some cases, in some unique cases. He's especially in Bukhari, right? So he's talking about Imam Bukhari's Sahih. It is known from his madhab that it was not enough for him to rely on anana without proving the chance of meeting. But this last statement, why it's problematic, because even he had to admit what? That this anana happens. So here, I'll share with you a few hadith. Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami, he narrates on the authority of Uthman. يعني خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. Like the best of you is the one who teaches the Quran, who learns the Quran and teaches it. When Uthman radiallahu anh, he was surrounded, and I'll share the entire hadith, is when he radiallahu anh was encircled by the rebels, like those individuals who wanted to kill him, he looked upon them from above and said, I ask you by Allah, I ask nobody but the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, don't you know that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever will dig the well of Ruma will be granted paradise, and I am the one who dug it. Meaning, so what is he doing? Uthman, what is he doing in front of these rebels? He's reminding them of his status. Like, you guys want to kill me, you guys want to bring me down, but who am I? Like, I just want to tell you who it is that I am and what I've done. He says, don't you know that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever equips the army of Usra, yani going to Ghazat Tabuk, will be granted paradise, and I'm the one that equipped it. I'm the one that gave the army their tools. And they attested to whatever he said. They agreed. They said, yes, you are that one, you are that person. And when Umar radiallahu anh, he founded his endowment, he said, its administrator can eat from it. This is in the hadith. So he said, the management of the endowment can be taken over by the founder himself or any other person, for both cases are permissible. So over here he's giving rulings. He's talking about his virtue, and he's sharing different examples of it, and then he's giving a ruling based on what the statement that he took from Umar radiallahu anh. Shu'bah and Ibn Ma'in, they both said that Abu Abdurrahman did not meet Uthman. So the one who narrated this hadith, they're saying that this individual did not meet Uthman. And where is this hadith? In Bukhari. And Ahmed, he accepted Shu'bah's ruling. Meaning you have three scholars now. You have three scholars who are saying that Abdurrahman al-Sulami, he did not meet Uthman radiallahu anh, but the way that he narrates, he uses an. So how does Ibn Hajar respond? He's in a dilemma now, right? So he's taken this position that you have to establish a meeting, and now you have a situation where you have three scholars saying that these two people did not meet. So he says that Abu Abdurrahman taught Quran in the era of Uthman into the era of Hajjaj. So you have three scholars saying they didn't meet. Ibn Hajar, what proof is he using that they met? Mu'asra. I'm sorry, I probably lost some of you. Huh? Is Mu'asra enough? Yes. According to the madhab of who? Huh? Al-Muslim. So this this is the madhab of Imam Muslim. So even Ibn Hajar, what proof does he use that these two people could have? He used the proof that they could have met because they lived in the same time, and this is exactly the madhab of Imam Muslim when he talks about corroborating whether a report is sound or not. Another example. Urwa ibn Zubair on the authority of Salama. So here Ibn Hajar, he says that he brings two reasons on why this is sound, and then he says, Urwa meeting Salama is not far-fetched because he lived 33 years of his life while she was living and they lived in the same land. So what did he end up doing here also? He did mu'asara. He said that it's possible that they met. Why? Because there was 33 years of overlap in their life and they lived in the same land. And there are more than this, right? I'm just bringing you two examples, but there are a number of examples that demonstrate this. So here, another proof is that Imam Bukhari, he uses mukataba, munawala, wijada, and as a proof in a sahih. And these are all just different ways of either coming across the writing of your sheikh, or coming across the book of your sheikh, or getting permission to narrate from your sheikh. All of these are different ways that he considers sahih, showing that it's not necessary that two people had to have actually met. Why? Because you have other proofs to correctly ascribe those hadith to these individuals. Imam Bukhari himself, he has in his in different places mentioned why that even mu'asara is just enough even for him, rahimahullah. So Imam al-Tirmidhi in his al-Kabir, he asked Imam Bukhari about a hadith of Ata ibn Yasir on the authority of Abu Waqid al-Laythi, saying, is this hadith accepted? He responded, yes. I said to him, and this is Tirmidhi and Bukhari going back and forth, Ata ibn Yasar was a contemporary to Abu Waqid, yani did they live in the same time? So he said he should have met him. Ata ibn Yasar is quite early. Meaning that Ata ibn Yasar was an early, yani he lived in an early time period, so the chances of them meeting should be high because they lived in the same time. Another example. In his Awsat. So over here, Imam Bukhari, he has Tarikh al-Kabir, he has Tarikh al-Awsat. He says in his Awsat concerning the chain of Yusuf ibn Abdullah ibn al-Harith, and he narrates on Ahnaf ibn Qais. Abdullah Abu al-Walid narrates on the authority of Aisha and Abu Hurairah, and we don't deny that he heard from both of them because between the death of Aisha and Ahnaf, there were about 12 years. Meaning that there was a possibility that they met because they lived in the same time frame. And Abdullah here, he's talking about was Yusuf's father, who was the narrator on Ahnaf. So over here he's saying that, okay, well his father lived at this time, so his son was probably around here, and the chances of them having met are very possible. Here you have a list of scholars who say that mu'asara is enough. A list of scholars. From them, Ali ibn Madini, who was a contemporary of Imam Bukhari. Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who was their sheikh. Yahya ibn Ayn, Abu Hatim al-Razi, Abu Zura al-Razi, Ibn Khuzaymah, Ibn Hibban, and Daraqutni. All major hadith scholars. All of them agree on this issue that mu'asara is enough. You don't need to establish that they met. There's a ijma'. They have ijma' that narrations from contemporaries who have not met as tadlis. Yes. They couldn't have met. Yes. The possibility exists, right? The possibility exists. The issue on, does that bring doubt to the sunnah? That's definitely an issue that's worth discussing. And the response would be like, okay, I understand what you're saying. That, all right, well, if you have two people that didn't meet, or it's possible that they met and it's possible that there's an intermediary, how can we rely on those ahadith? The issue comes in is like, okay, well, if you have people who fulfill the conditions, right? If you have people who are religious, people who are upright, people who are sound, meaning that every time they narrate something, they're narrating it in the same way. What are the chances, number one, of these people lying? Little to none. And if we know that they're not lying, then and they're being consistent in how they're narrating, what are the chances of them making a mistake? So you have tadlis here, you have anana here in the beginning part of the chain, then you have a parallel chain where it comes a little bit later, and then you have a third chain where it comes in the middle. What are the chances of them, even if they didn't meet in these particular instances, what are the chances of the end hadith, all of them agreeing in these parallel chains, all being wrong? That they all the intermediaries made the same mistake. You understand what I'm saying? If I have three parallel chains, and I'm just using the example of three, sometimes you have hundreds, but if you have three parallel chains, and here you have on the authority of at the beginning of the chain, Here you have authority on the authority of in the middle of the chain, and here on the authority of at the end of the chain, right? Different parts of the chain, different narrators, all together, right? Because these are parallel chains, and you have the text the same in all three of these narrations. The hadith is connected, right? Now, who the intermediary was, sometimes it makes a difference, sometimes it doesn't. But my question is how can you say these hadith aren't sound, and how is it possible that you have three different people at three different levels in three different chains all making the same mistake to come up with the same hadith? Not even. You're talking about infinitesimal. It's not possible that you have all these parallel chains running and then every single one of them makes the same mistake in order for the hadith to come out the same way. It's not possible. You know, especially for some of them, you know that they lived in different places. Like these people didn't even meet. Like for sure, you know they didn't meet. So these are all things that bring more credence. Even if you have a chance for intermediaries between them, you'll find that the end result, it doesn't make an effect. And why doesn't it make an effect? Because you've already gone through the filtration process of who that particular narrator is, right? So in the conditions we put for the narrator is what? That he be thiqah, right? That he be reliable, that he live in a certain time period, XYZ. We put all those conditions there. But the extra condition we put in this situation is that he's not mudallis. Right? If we know he's not mudallis, then that's enough for us to say, like, okay, he's not somebody who, because the mudallis, why is he trying to hide the intermediary? So if I have a person A narrating from person C, right, and this person is mudallis, why is he removing person B? Not necessarily forging, right? So because this person might be weak. Right, so what does he do? He leaves out the weak sheikh because his sheikh, it makes him look like what? It makes him look stronger, right? Because he's narrating from somebody who's strong. But this person needs to be known for that, right? So if he's known for that, this is a reason for the hadith to be like Baqi ibn Walid, very famous mudallis. And Imam Ahmad, he actually praised Baqi and his righteousness and piety, even his hifz. He said he was very strong, but he didn't take his hadith. Why? Because he was mudallis. He was known to do tadlis. That he would purposely hide his shuyukh. But the people who are thiqah and who don't do tadlis, when they do this sometimes, right, when they remove the intermediary, why are they removing the intermediary? No. Think about it. This person doesn't do tadlis, but he's removing the intermediary. Why? Like the example that Imam Muslim brings of the companions. Right, it's not possible that two companions met. Like one was the early one. He he lived before Islam, and then he died in Badr, and then this person he became Muslim at in Uhud. How is it possible that they met? Right, it's not possible. But the companions, they didn't have a problem with this. Why? Well, I mean, you can make an argument that they were companions and X, Y, Z, but at the end of the day, we have to understand that this idea of removing intermediaries, it's a very human, very natural, very normal thing. It's not something that's aib. It's not something that's strange. So if I hear from someone else about a third party, I'll just say, well, he said, right? Why do I'm not going to mention all the intermediaries. Like this is not a normal human thing that we do. What we usually do is we'll cut all of the middlemen out so that we can ascribe it to the person who said it. Because this is the quickest way to speak. And this is why even Ibn Salah, he said this happened earlier. Why? Because they weren't doing it out of ill intent. You guys understand? Right? They were trying to make it shorter, right? They were trying to get to the point. Right? And they were trying to condense, and not just that, when was the isnad, when was it asked for? When was it sought? Right? Muhammad ibn Sirin, we mentioned a very clear hadith on this. He said that we didn't used to ask about the isnad except after the fitna. Meaning that before the fitna happened, the isnad was what? It wasn't a big deal. They would just ascribe things. They said, okay, Ali said that the Prophet ﷺ said, right? They would use the companion and they would use the Prophet ﷺ. But they wouldn't, for them it wasn't a big deal. Having an intermediary, not having an intermediary, it didn't make a hadith because their intention was never what? It wasn't about the chain for them. It was about what? What the Prophet ﷺ actually said. That's what mattered to them. But as time went on, the importance of the chain, what happened? It started it grew significantly because now you had actors, right? You had actors who had ill intent. You had people who, political reasons, religious reasons, right? Sometimes financial reasons of why they would try to make changes in that. So that's why they started asking who these intermediaries were. So this idea of not having, like, removing, it was, like I said, it's a very natural, normal human endeavor. This is not something that we should, well, how did they do this and how did they do? No, it was normal. We do it every day. It's something that we, as people, as Muslims, we do every single day. And we don't intend ill. We're just trying to ascribe the information to the person. And this is something, again, that the companions did. It's something that was not considered aib or strange during the time of the tabi'een, that, the students of the companions. So these aren't things that we should look down on. These aren't things that we should say, well, it puts doubt in this. No, because they never had an ill intent to do it. They were just trying to ascribe things to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And as the chain went on, and as it got louder, and as you had bad actors coming into the hadith tradition, that's when you had more of a checking into the depth behind it. Does that make sense? Yes, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like Ibn Salah said, is like there came a certain time period where they'd be like, okay, listen, anything before this, it's okay. You as long as they are sound, we're okay with that. Why? Because you have this list of scholars that says, hey, all of these are hadith, they're okay. They're not a problem. So you can go sometime like the tabi'i, the atba' tabi, like these first 3 generations or so. If you had that break in between, it wasn't considered as a big deal. It became a problem later, like when you start entering later generations, because now, like we had agreed, there were bad actors that came in, and they really had to sift through, like, okay, who's really narrating on who. This becomes an issue in certain things. And one of the brothers, he asked me at the end of class last week, he was like, okay, what about the narrations of Hassan al-Basri on Umar and on Ali specifically? Right? You have such narrations. In those situations, what is the problem with his narrations? He's mudallis. Hassan al-Basri, he was mudallis. Not just a small mudallis, he was like a big he was a big mudallis. Huh? No, he was not. Rahimahullah. He was not. Absolutely not. He used to do tadlis. So him sharing narrations, again, the idea for him was the ascription. But he did it so often that he was khalas. He was labeled as a mudallis. And if we have narrations from him on Umar or on Ali, can we take them? No. No. What did we say? What condition did we put? That as long as a person is not mudallis. Ahsant. No, and so for people who becomes a habit, like Hassan al-Basri, Baqi ibn Walid, and other than them, when it becomes a habit, what did the scholars do with their hadith? Now, utruku. They leave it. They leave their hadith. When do they accept it? But does that mean that their hadith are rejected completely? No. But there are hadith that are accepted. Which hadith are accepted? So imagine a person is mudallis. On what condition will I accept his hadith? Yes. So corroboration is definitely one way. What's a stronger way? Yes. Huh? Not specialized. I think there's another term that you're looking for. I want you guys to think about this. If I'm doubting that there's an intermediary, what does he have to do in order to remove that doubt? Huh? No, cross-reference is the same thing that he said, right? So that's a bonus way of doing it. But I'm saying there's a clear way. Yes, akhi. He has to specify. Ahsant. He has to do tasrih. So if he doesn't say on the authority of it, if he says, I heard, because somebody who's mudallis is not a what? He's not a liar, right? This is an important point. A mudallis is not a liar. Because when he says on the authority of, is he lying? No, he's not lying. He's just removing the intermediary, and he's not being clear that he actually heard from that person. So he's not lying. No, he's doing it on purpose. But yeah. So he's ascribing things, right? He's ascribing things that he heard. And it doesn't like, the idea is like, do we accept a hadith from that person or not? No, we don't. If they do, anana. But if they're doing sami'at, I heard, or haddathana, or akhbarana, right? We were informed or it was told to us. All of these are completely acceptable even from the mudallis. A parallel issue comes up, like one of the brothers, he said, okay, well, what about these silsilat that we have, right? So you have a silsila in the different Sufi circles, where I have a silsila to Ali, or I have a silsila to Abu Bakr, right? Like, depending on what tariqah you follow. How come those are okay? Even though, like, so you have a silsila from who? From Hassan to Ali, yes? Big time, right? It's big, like almost all. Why? Except the Naqshbandis, right? So I'm saying, okay, why is that? Is that an issue or is that not an issue? Sure. How is it an issue? How is it not an issue? I'm sorry? But we're talking about in the musalsalat. We're talking about in the tariqas. Yes. Good. Right. Because is there narration that's happening here? No. Basically, when you have people in the silsila, what makes them stand out is because they're considered the inheritors of that person. Right? They're considered the narrators of that person. And alhamdulillah, I had the opportunity to meet Sheikh Muhammad Yahya al-Ninwi, and he said that these are not knowledge-based and information-based transmission, right? Like hadith are. This is what? They're qalbi, right? So these are things that are transmitted, meaning that these people inherited that religious experience or that spiritual experience. Are they the same thing? No, they're completely separate things. They're completely separate things. But can I now claim that, oh, this directly goes? No, I can't. I can't. Many times it's done out of barakah, right? Many times it's done out of seeking blessing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, for me to say that Hassan rahimahullah met Ali radiallahu anh, ba'id kull bu'd. This is completely far-fetched. It's completely far-fetched. Huh? All right, I already know I'm going to get demanded. There's going to be a bunch of brothers with sandals, you know what I mean? They're going to jump me after class. Allah protect me and them, I mean. Yeah. As a terse, tadlis is when you remove a narrator. When you remove the intermediary between you and the person you're narrating on. Simple as that. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So. Those are different because you're not talking about spiritual inheritance in those cases, right? You're actually talking about physical artifacts that exist. Now, some people doubt the authenticity of those physical artifacts. Some people don't doubt them. For me, it's not. I mean, it's not a big deal. Like, whether you accept it or you don't accept it, whatever. For me, honestly, like just on a personal level, I think only two things have survived. I think al-mud al-nabawi, the amount that he would hold in a handful, that volume has survived, and like the dirham, so like the gold that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually used. And part of the reasons I feel that it makes sense for those to have survived is because we need those measurements religiously. Does that make sense? Like when it comes to taking out zakat al-fitr, I need to know religiously how much a mud is, how much a handful is. When it comes to giving zakat, right, regular zakat, I need to know how much the coin weighed and the quality of the gold in order for me to determine how much zakat is to be given. It makes sense for me why Allah would protect those two things. As for these other things, yeah, maybe. Like his shoes and like the hair and, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I mean, the Mus'haf, I don't think so. I think Mus'haf Uthman, they claim, but even that is like, it's kind of far-fetched. It's kind of far-fetched, man. But is it possible? Wallahu alam, maybe. I don't know. But like I said, like those two things for sure for me. As for the other things, I don't know. It's difficult for me to say anything about it. And I mean, huh? I mean, let them enjoy it. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like, they're not hurting anyone, man. Like, what I mean? They're not hurting anyone. What do I want? I want to meet the Prophet ﷺ, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to meet him around his hawd and drink from the hawd and be with him sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But yeah, like it's difficult for me to believe that some of these artifacts exist. Even the last known artifact that I believe existed was his ring, and Allah knows best. But his ring was lost. It was lost during the time of Uthman in a well. But other than that, I don't know if any, like I can't, it's difficult for me to substantiate some of them. But the ones, like I said, the ones who are doing it, man, they're not hurting anybody, man. It's like, go ahead, man. They wanna, they're seeking, they believe it's from the Prophet and they seek barakah from it. Tafadhal, man, go ahead, seek it. Like the Prophet says, ahlan bi. He's deserving of it, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Huh? From the person? From the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? No. But a physical object that touched him. Physical object that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam utilized, right? You know, this is very different. You know, so things that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam physically utilized is very important. I mean, even this idea of like the mud, right? Even this idea of like a measurement, does it have to be prophetic? Did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said like when you measure it has to be with my measurement? No. I'm saying it's a guessed like it's a volume, right? And everybody's hands is going to have a little bit different volume, right? It's not going to be like a huge difference, but like everybody's hand is going to hold a different volume. So when it comes to like a couple, why were the companions so haris on a prophetic mud? Because it's blessed, right? Like his hands were blessed. Like everything he did was blessed. Everything he touched was blessed. Like even the volume that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam would carry was yani barakah, man. And they wanted that barakah to continue into their lifetimes. But that is out of love. You know, it's out of love for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And even all the people who do this, why are they doing it? Are they doing it just randomly? No, they're doing it because they love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, and even the biggest skeptics, like, you know, for like the issue of Mawlid, Ibn Taymiyyah, you know what he says? He says that I see the celebration of Mawlid to be an innovation, but it's possible that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards them for their love. So. And I'm saying he's the harshest opponent. He's like one of the harshest opponents for that, and even he made that claim. So, like I said, man, this is smaller than a Mawlid, man. This like, it's not a big deal. Like, I think we make a big deal out of things that don't deserve such attention or does not deserve to be a big deal. Like I said, man, they're not hurting anyone. They believe it. Khalas, let them believe it, man. Like, what? It's not hurting you, Shufi. And if there's a chance that they're right, then what? Khalas. So here, the other problem with this claim that Imam Bukhari, he made it a condition that all of them had to have met. This actually has a negative effect on the Sunnah, because now if you put Bukhari on that pedestal, what happens to the other books of the Sunnah? They lose their value. They lose their value, and now you're limiting the Sunnah in a way that Imam Bukhari did not intend to limit the Sunnah. It's actually broader than that. It's actually broader than that. And we had said last time, okay, what makes Imam Bukhari's Sunnah or Sahih Sah, like what makes it more sound is the fact that he did that, like he had more knowledge, right? He had more knowledge of the narrators. He had more knowledge of the comparative ones. Like when he talked about ilal, when he knew the shortcomings and the defects in the hadith, he was more informed, right? He was far more informed than Imam Muslim was. He was an imam in ilal. He was an imam in rijal, right? He was an imam in the hidden defects. He was an imam in the narrators. He knew what the strongest chains were, and those are the ones that, in general, he put in his Sahih. Also, there's Imam Muslim's claim of ijma'. Imam Muslim's claim that there's consensus on this issue. There's nothing stronger than that. Like once you claim there's ijma' on something and there's consensus on it, you have to come with like qat'i, burhani proofs that he is wrong. You have to. Like it's not enough for you to say like, oh, okay, well, you know, no, so-and-so said this was opposite of it, so it's not possible. No. If he claims there was a ijma' and nobody challenged him, you're talking about 3 generations, or not 3 generations, 300 years, and nobody challenged this is a big issue. This is a big issue. So an'ana is considered a proof for the scholars of hadith, right? So when they said on the authority of, this was something that they considered a proof. The other thing is that understanding that as long as you have contemporaries narrating on each other, and we have a number of hadith where we proved that this actually happened, this was also, again, a condition enough. These types of a hadith are full of in our history. So if you go through the Islamic history and Islamic legacy and go through the hadith encyclopedia, you'll find a number of hadith are transmitted in this way. And we have to understand that this is a reliable way of transmitting the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And any attack on this idea is an attack on the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there are 2 last things that I wanted to talk about, and there are 2 last things that I want to discuss. over here is those scholars that claim this was an additional condition, right? This idea of liqa, this idea of meeting was an additional condition. Did they make that claim because of their exhaustive reading of Bukhari Sahih? It's a valid question, yes? Was that the case? That they did an exhaustive reading of Imam Bukhari Sahih and they said, no, this was actually the condition. We have to understand that even those who did exhaustive reading, like Ibn Hajar, how many examples did we give that even he had to accept that over here, the only way that it could be sound is because of Mu'asara, because they lived at the same time? I give 2 examples and there are a number more. I didn't bring all of them. I just wanted to bring 2 just to show you and just to give you an example that it does happen in Imam Bukhari's Sahih. So if we look at Bukhari's book itself, it is actually a proof for or against this idea of having the conditional meeting. Huh? For or against? Against, right? It's a strong proof against this idea. And even if we understand, what does istiqra' mean? When we say that an exhaustive reading, this means that you have to look over every single narrator in Imam Bukhari Sahih. You have to look at every single person who he narrates from. You have to look at all of his students and make sure that every single one reads, and then you have to repeat that for every single level of the chain. Is that even a realistic expectation? No, it's too much. Like this is an unrealistic expectation to go through and do that extensive type of reading and do that extensive type of research that no previous scholar has done. Frankly, no previous scholar has done this. No, it's too much work. It's too much work. Why? Because this idea of proving that they didn't meet, it's far easier than proving that they did. Because this means you need to look at all of the parallel narrations of these people and say, is it possible that, is there any point that he narrated from him directly? And you're talking about a vastly extensive research project of listing every single narrator and looking at all the narrations that there were. Not, the other problem with that, many of the chains are what? Do we have every single chain of hadith, or have some of the chains been lost? Many of them have been lost. What did we say? That Imam Bukhari, how many hadith did he have? Or Imam Muslim, let's just use Muslim. How many hadith did Imam Muslim choose from? 300,000. He chose from 300,000 hadith, and in his book we can say, and this is with repetition, whatever, maybe 12,000 hadith. Maybe 12,000 hadith in his Sahih. With repetition, everything. So out of 300,000, what happened to the other 280,000 hadith? He didn't feel the need to include those chains. Why? Because what he put in his Sahih was representative of the Prophet ﷺ Sunnah and all the authentic hadith. So the other, and this is the final claim, is that there are some claims that what I'm claiming and what I'm saying to you, they're saying, okay, well, this is something that's new. Nobody preceded you in saying that. This idea, this agreement with Imam Muslim, you literally don't have from like 544 until 10, 15 years ago, nobody agreed to this. They all said that Imam Bukhari made it a condition. So what gives you the right to make this claim? What do you guys think about that? That you're fighting 700 years of, no, more than that, 900 years of scholarship. No, I'm saying this claim I'm giving you guys, and this viewpoint that I'm sharing with you, this is something that I think most of my teachers are against. They say that liqa is a condition. I say no, it's not. So all my teachers, except Sheikh Hatem, he says no. He says it's not a condition. So he's saying now, he's like, okay, well, I'm agreeing with Muslim, and I've gone against 900 years of scholarship. Is that okay? I don't know. That's a yes. Am I being more objective? Yes. Any comments? Is it okay to fight 900 years of scholarship? I'm sorry. You need to have a solid argument. You need to have a solid argument. Yeah. 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 So I think the first response to this is that is Sheikh Hatem the first person to make this claim? No, we had a list of scholars, right? I gave a list of statements from different scholars. They said, no, it's as long as they lived in the same time, it's fine. So he's not the first person to make that claim. And even if he is the first person to make that claim, is that a problem? No. Why? Because you need to have a strong argument. You need to have strong proofs. And that is enough, so even, and the reason that I mention this, and again, the reason I want to really emphasize this idea is because I don't want you guys to be academically scared. Don't be afraid to challenge. Don't. Even me. Don't be afraid to challenge me even. Because in challenge comes what? Comes improvement. Because either my idea is going to be further fortified or you're going to be right. Yes? It can only be one of the two. So every time a challenge comes to an idea, if the idea is able to push the challenge away, then the idea becomes stronger. And if the opposing idea is right, what happens? Then this takes it, right? And then what's going to happen to this idea? It's going to be challenged. But this idea of constantly challenging is something that's really important and something I really want to instill in you guys. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to challenge. If there's something you don't agree with, come. But don't disagree just to disagree, huh? Every time you challenge, make sure you challenge with a proof. Challenge with a proof. And this is, we'll stop here, inshallah. Next week, finally, we will start Kitab al-Iman. It will be the first hadith, inshallah, that we start with. That is on Imam Muslim's condition. So I'll see all of you next week, inshallah. Jazakum khair. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin. Nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Wa feeka barakallah. Any questions before we end this evening? No? You guys want to go back over some of the chains that he uses as an example for anana or no? Yeah? I can do a few. Should I do a few examples? Okay, khalas. Let me do a few examples and then we'll end. The first one is وأسند عبد الرحمن بن أبي ليلى وقد حفظ عن عمر بن الخطاب وصاحب عليا وعن أنس بن مالك عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So over here, Imam Muslim, he mentions Abd al-Rahman ibn Abi Layla, that he narrates on Umar ibn al-Khattab and Ali and Anas ibn Malik. And the only way that he narrates from them is using an. He doesn't say حدثت or حدثنا or he doesn't say سمعت. So over here, Abd al-Rahman ibn Abi Layla, he was from the major tabi'een. He's from the major tabi'een. And it's possible, so the tabi'een have three levels. You guys know, you have the major tabi'een, you have al-awsat, and you have the sigar, right? So you have the major tabi'een. What do you guys think that means? So if you have the big, middle, and small, I wish I could translate that better. But, you're right. So the major, I think major, right? Major, middle, and less. Is that a better way of expressing it? So major, if you say a major tabi'i, that the most of his teachers or all of them are what? Companions. Awsat, middle, some and some. And sigar, the small or the less, few, right? So few to maybe one. Right, so this is basically how they were categorized. Abd al-Rahman ibn Abi Layla, he was considered a major tabi'i. So the chances of him meeting Umar and Ali are what? They're high. And the only way he transmits is using an. وأسند ربعي ibn حراش عن عمران بن حسين عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثين وعن أبي بكر عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثا وقد سمع ربعي ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib روى عنه. So over here you have Rib'i ibn Hirash, that he narrates on Imran ibn Hussein. He narrates on him two hadith using an. And he narrates on Abi Bakr one hadith using an. And he narrates on Ali where he actually says that he heard him. So if he heard Ali, it's very likely that he also met, right, the other two companions, Imran ibn Hussein and Abi Bakr. Right? So if he heard from Ali, it is very likely that he met the other two companions as well, even though when he narrates on those other two companions, he uses an. And these chains, by the way, are accepted by all the scholars of hadith. These chains that I'm mentioning, the reason I'm mentioning them, Imam Muslim is mentioning them, is because these are the chains that are accepted by the scholars of hadith without question. وأسند نافع بن جبير بن مطعم عن أبي شريح الخزاعي عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثا. So over here you have Nafi' ibn Jubair ibn Mut'im, who is a thiqa narrator, no doubt about it. He narrates عن Abi Shurayh al-Khuzai, and he's a companion, and he narrates from him a singular hadith using عن. And the hadith is something that all of the scholars of hadith accept. وأسند النعمان بن أبي عياش عن أبي سعيد الخدري ثلاثة أحاديث عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So again, another example, Nu'man ibn Abi Ayyash, he narrates 3 hadith on Abi Sa'id al-Khudri, all of them using عن. وأسند عطاء بن يزيد الليثي عن تميم الداري عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثا. And here, عطاء ibn Yazid al-Laythi, again, these are all thiqa, these are all reliable scholars using عن. And they're narrating on Tamim. He's narrating on the companion Tamim al-Dari, this hadith on the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. وأسند سليمان بن يسار عن رافع بن خديج عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حديثا. And here another example, Sulaiman ibn Yasar, he uses عن on the authority of Rafi' ibn Khadij on the authority of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. وأسند حميد بن عبد الرحمن الحميري عن أبي هريرة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أحاديث. So over here, I think this is the last example I believe that he shares. But he says, you have Humayd ibn Abd al-Rahman al-Himyari, that this scholar, Humayd, he narrates on Abi Huraira multiple ahadith. He narrates multiple ahadith, again, using on the authority of. And he closes here, فَكُلُّ هَؤُلَاءِ التَّابِعِينَ الَّذِينَ نَصَبْنَا رَوَايَتُهُمْ مِنَ الصَّحَابَةِ. Right, so here he ends saying that these are all examples of tabi'in, all examples of the students of the companions who narrated on the companions using an without clarifying whether they heard from them directly or not. And Allah knows best. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Any questions? No? Did I beat you guys over the head enough with an'ana? I feel like Warsan has a question. See, I knew it. Mm-hmm. No. So this is a question that we actually received last time. Like, okay, is it possible? Is it possible? Like, okay, this condition. It's not stated, but is it possible that Imam Bukhari made it a condition, right? So the possibility exists, but what do I have to do? All I need to do is bring one example that didn't happen. And there are multiple, right? So I shared like 2 or 3 with you, but there are a few examples that are there. Okay, well, if I'm bringing these 2 or 3 examples here, then it's possible that it happened in other places as well. Yeah, تفضل يا أخي. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sure. So how many exceptions do you need before you make it not a rule? No, it's a valid question, right? Say, okay, well, this was his condition throughout his book, except in these 7 places. Is that enough? 8? 10? You know what I mean? Like, how many examples do you need to prove that it's not actually a rule? I would argue that unless you state it, just one is enough. Right? If you state that my condition is